I mean, for me, it's I don't know. I say, okay, this Tim Sheehy guy, who is he? Where'd he come from? And so who provided those
Yeah, but
contracts?
you still
Taxpayers.
have to start with something.
Hmm.
Right. Well, you have to start. I mean, you said he has six $30 million airplanes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just asking.
Wait a minute. Here we go. Private equity behemoth Blackstone Incorporated is the company's largest single
Bingo.
stockholder.
Oh, there you go. Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
You just said it all right there.
Well, good Sunday afternoon, and welcome to Connecting the Dots with Dan Happel. And my guest today will be retired U.S. Marine Corps Colonel Bill Coate. Bill was involved as a intelligence training officer. He was the head of the intelligence, the U.S. Marine Corps intelligence service in the Middle East and Iraq, and he retired as the commandant of the Dam Neck Marine Intelligence Training Center just outside of Quantico. I'm going to bring up the subject of Tim Sheehy. We just saw the Uniparty come out, and of course, the establishment people are always the same. They can't get behind a guy fast enough. And the fact is, according to Montanans for Limited Government, she sent out a great article about the connections between Tim Sheehy and all the DEI and ESG crap that is being pushed by the globalists. And man, there's so many connections there, you can't believe it. I mean, we've even got some of their own writing on this, and all I can tell you is that they believe in UN Agenda 21, and they believe in environmental social governance, and they believe in diversity, equity, and inclusiveness as part of their political platform, because that's what's at the heart of the whole globalist Marxist movement.
The whole thing to me is that the American people have lost their ability to use common sense and apply any analytical rigor to anyone that's running for office. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I say, okay, this Tim Sheehy guy, who is he? Where'd he come from?
We've got some of the articles that have been published about Tim Sheehy, and he's actually interviewed for many of them so that he can tell people firsthand how much he believes in ESG and in DEI and in all these Marxist socialist crappy programs that are pushing us into global government. Keep in mind, now he had a public offering back in January. He is now a publicly traded company, I believe. I'm trying to think. I think it's BAER are the ticker symbols for his company. But guess what? Almost all of his contracts that he's got are with the U.S. federal government. Well, talk about in bed with the government. You couldn't get any more in bed.
Well, the thing that really kind of, I don't know, gets me is a friend of mine that I served with in the Marine Corps sent me an email and said, hey, I see another Navy SEAL is in the politics in Montana. And I'm like, well, who is it and whatever. And he sends me a picture of Ryan Zinke putting a medal on a Navy SEAL lieutenant. So Zinke's a congressman from Montana. The Navy SEAL lieutenant is from Minnesota. And just, I did spend 30 years in Marine Corps. I only know of two. I've seen pictures of two officers having a political figure pin a medal on them. One was Ryan Zinke having Governor Schweitzer do it, and now I see Zinke doing it on this guy. And I'm like, who is this guy? We should be asking the question, who is he and where does he come from? And if you tell me you're going to vote for someone because they served their country in combat, I'm going to tell you you're a fool. And I served my country in combat. I served my country for 30 years, but I wouldn't ask you to vote for me because of that. I would ask
Right.
you to vote for me because I was interviewing for a job and I was bringing something to the table other than a slogan.
I want to go to the one that talks about, Sheehy talks about D.A. Davidson, who was the brokerage that handled his public offering, about how wonderful it was that they were following the ESG guidelines that were coming down from international sources on environmental social governance. Oh, well, this is a video. This is a little video clip. Let's go ahead and play that video clip.
Bridger Aerospace is one of the nation's largest privately held aerial firefighting companies, and it will start trading on the NASDAQ today. And with me is the founder and CEO, Tim Sheehy, to explain the company a little bit. First, congratulations. Just making it to an IPO. I know it's a lot of work and a lot of headaches, so congratulations on that.
Thanks a lot. It's been quite the journey.
Yes, I'm sure it has. So tell me about the history of the company. When was it founded and why?
So we were founded in 2014. We started business operations in about November of that year, and we were 100% veteran founded. I was a Navy SEAL officer. I was wounded in combat overseas and got out of the military and started Bridger Aerospace with the purpose of bringing the aerial surveillance technology that we used in support of ground teams in Iraq and Afghanistan, and taking that same aerial surveillance capability with infrared electro-optic imaging and converting that to a public safety task to address things like border security, law enforcement, search and rescue, and of course, wildfire. We started with one plane and 2 people, and now here about 8 years later, we're just about 200 employees, growing fast, over 20 aircraft. And as you see today, now in the public markets. We're really proud of it, and it's been a fun journey.
No, that's amazing. And it makes total sense that you're in Montana, because I know out west, it feels like every year we've got these fires going on. So explain your business and how it's grown, and why do you think we see these fires that are, inflicting California, Montana, Idaho, things like that?
Absolutely. Well, it's not even just the Western U.S. It's really global at this point. Last summer, Europe had their worst fire year in modern recorded history. South America burns. Australia has fires every year. So the wildfire crisis is really spreading globally. As we see the effects of climate change and urbanization along the wildland-urban interface, we're seeing fires become larger, they move faster, they're hotter, and most importantly, it's becoming more and more critical to combat them early because of the amount of settlement we have in wildfire-prone areas. So that crisis has really transformed in the last decade to 2 decades. Of course, our business started right around that time, and we experienced a pretty rapid uplift in demand from our customer base, which consists of state governments and federal agencies. And that demand is really skyrocketing worldwide. So we recognized that, had a technology that was desired by that market, and have really leaned into it and seen great successes with the added aircraft like you see behind me, our CL-415 EAF Super Scoopers, complementing our surveillance aircraft. I don't think the demand is going to go down anytime soon, unfortunately, but serve that need, and we'll continue to grow with it.
Well, and you also mentioned border security, and that's, of course, been in the news quite a bit lately. What kind of business do you do with that?
We don't do any, actually. When we started the business, we were focused on a number of public safety tasks, but within about 9 months, it became very clear that the Forest Service's demand for what we were able to do was extremely high, and very quickly became a pure play company, which we are today. 100% focused on wildfire response, climate change related wildfire crises. And, as we're looking at kind of a counter recessionary investment thesis now, as we look at 2023 being a fairly unusual year, we're a business that's not dependent on that, not consumer spending. We're federally funded, state funded. And, these fires that happen in the U.S. and globally don't respond to what the stock market says or what consumer price index says. They're going to burn, and they have to be fought, and we're here to fight them.
Okay, very interesting point. Now, this is with Jack Creek Investment Corporation. So is this a SPAC? And kind of explain the business behind it, how much you hope to raise, what would you like to do with the proceeds?
Well, clearly the SPAC market has transformed a lot in the last several months. And to be honest, we didn't intend to raise any capital with this SPAC. That wasn't the purpose of it. The purpose was to give us access to the public markets, because as we take a 5 to 10 year horizon on this business, and we look at how we've grown in the last 8 years, we see a lot of increased demand for what we're doing. We want to continue to grow. And being the position we are in now as a company, growing in the public markets will be better for us as owners. It'll be easier for us to acquire new airframes and get new forms of financing as a publicly traded security. So we didn't really do the SPAC with any intent to raise capital. Of course, any small business loves cash, and we did get some cash out of the SPAC, so we're excited about that. But overall, redemptions were high as expected. And but the point is, we're in the public markets now, and we're going to be able to use that currency to grow and diversify and increase the value of our business.
And what is the ticker symbol?
We are going to be trading under BAER, Bear.
Oh, Bear, okay. And this is a very capital intensive business. I mean, you need the plane, so the capital raise makes a lot of sense for you to expand and move forward.
Exactly right. I mean, right behind me here, we have 6 of these aircraft, and this is a $30 million plane. So they can be financed, but money's still money. It's expensive to get them. And this is going to make it easier for us to do that more flexibly going forward.
Yeah. Now, talk a little bit about your experiences as a Navy SEAL and how that helped you in terms of starting a business, the skills you learned, and just the general life lessons you learned in the military.
So I went to the Naval Academy in Annapolis, and I met my wife there, actually. She was a Marine officer, so we were in the military together for several years. And as soon as I graduated, which was in 2008, of course, we had 2 wars ongoing. So 5 days after graduation, I started SEAL training, and about a week after I finished SEAL training, I was in Iraq on my first mission. So it was a very busy period of time. I did several deployments, was wounded a few times, and ended up getting out and starting the business using those lessons we learned. And as I mentioned, being a ground force commander as an officer, I was responsible for the planning and tactical direction of our teams on the ground. And that's when I was introduced to this capability of aerial ISR, of having aircraft overhead, giving us that real-time data in infrared and daytime video, and giving us all that kind of situational awareness that you wouldn't normally have as boots on the ground task force. And understanding how the power of that air-ground team integrated was a force multiplier. So seeing how many lives were saved and how much expansion of our tactical capabilities existed when we integrated the air and the ground together, I try to take that same vision and apply it to non-combat related tasks and say, the nation can benefit from this just like the military did overseas. And luckily our thesis held true, and providing that kind of close air support, close integrated aerial surveillance ended up being a force multiplier for the Forest Service as well.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like the global kind of macro events that are happening, also the timing is right for a company such as yours as well, Tim. So congratulations, and great to hear about the company, and best of luck going forward.
Thanks so much for the time today.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, a couple of things stand out in that discussion, Bill, and I'd love to have your comments on that.
Well, it's pretty amazing. I wonder who his partners are. I'm just trying to think of how you go to, hundreds of millions of dollars of airplanes and stuff in 6 years. And he also, I guess he's a cowboy, is what he says when he donates money to the Republican Party. It was something on Dane's endorsement. He and somebody else have 30,000 acres in this Montana land conservation, and they are raising sustainable beef. Well, I've been in Montana all my life, and there's all these families that have raised beef for generations after generation. But when I hear the word sustainable, it makes my skin crawl, because we know where that comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to put 2 things together. I'm going to put climate change and sustainable beef together, and trying to figure out how that represents any of my values. I mean,
does he raise any bulls? Because there's stuff that goes with bulls,
Yeah. Well, there is, but we better not go there, because he's also into DEI, and that means that you're really not supposed to use pronouns. There's no such thing as a bull and a cow. It's just it.
It's just an it.
It's just an it. Now, something else, Bill, and you're going to love this. Remember when Zinke was pushing so hard in the drone thing? Okay, remember?
Yeah.
Drones? This guy's into the drone thing too. Okay, so is Tim Sheehy. He's really into the drone thing. Guess what? The EPA has now 20,000 drones monitoring all over the United States to make sure that everybody is following their environmental regulations.
Well, sure, because the Fourth Amendment doesn't matter. We can't be secure in our persons or papers or our things. You know, there's no due process of law. So my question is, in all your surveillance stuff, sorry, I was on the other side of that my whole career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I know about all that. And when you're turning this loose on the American citizenry and you're bragging about it, I got a problem with it. I'd love to see what he says about ESG. We can see about our pro ESG and what the diversity guy. You know, he's a diversity guy. So is what you're saying.
Yeah.
He's
yeah.
all.
Yeah,
how many,
he's into diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. And in the document, we've got it, so we can show it. But in the document that says diversity, equity, and inclusiveness, it talks about how they don't, their company will hire all these different things, transgenders and all this other crap, but they also, citizenship is not an important part. Yeah, this is the one on the bonds for the next generation. And there's a section in here that talks about how he is environmentally, right down here. It says, we need for the next generation and full service aerial firefighting platforms by leveraging sustainable and environmentally safe firefighting mechanisms. And then he goes on to talk about how it is so important that we understand that climate change is such an important part of this whole process, and that we need to be fully on board with all the programs that basically are part of Agenda 21.
He hit all the right buttons there, didn't he?
Oh boy. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. You know, it's amazing. Okay, now let's look at the biggest client. The biggest client is government. That's where most of his contracts are focused, in either a federal or state government. Does that look to you like that might be a conflict of interest?
Might be to me. I just think it's interesting that, well, I just wonder where all the money came from to start it. Was this guy wealthy? I mean, he made it all the way up to lieutenant, I think he said, in the Navy. I think he said, what, he was in 6 years?
It says the contracts with the U.S. agencies have provided around 3/4 of the company's revenue. She estimated in March earnings call, federal contracts accounted for 96% of the company's revenue in 2022, according to Securities and Exchange Commission filings.
And so who provided those?
Yeah,
contracts?
You still have to start with something.
Right. Well, you have to start. I mean, you said he has 6 $30 million airplanes, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just asking.
Wait a minute. Here we go. Private equity behemoth Blackstone Incorporated is the company's largest single stockholder.
Oh, there you go. Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
You just said it all right there.
Yep. And if anybody wants to know about Blackstone, they better read the latest New American magazine, where Alex Newman wrote a beautiful story about Blackstone, the behemoth that plans to own the world. Okay.
They have more power actually than the federal government, so financially. So, I mean,
they do.
I think that's an interesting. What article is that, Thumper?
This is Bloomberg Government, about bgov.com. Let's see. I'll drop the link here.
Yeah, drop the link. I've got it too, if you need it.
Could you keep going down? I like that it's basically Blackstone with government contracts.
Yeah.
You can't get any more in bed than that.
Well,